So remedial measures, the thing that everyone wants to know about. There's gemstones, there's mantra practice, meditation, service, yagyas, all these things, rudraksha beads, all these things that if you find the issue within a person's chart, you should be able to determine what can be of most help to the individual. Now, there's a lot of debate around remedial measures because, number one, certain remedial measures are extremely expensive. I only advise remedial measures that I personally use. I like gemstones. I really enjoy rudraksha beads, service, mantra, fasting, yagyas. All these are things that I've used. What I found, though, is that there are certain ways to determine how a person is going to respond to a remedial measure. For example, Jupiter, that can give good results with rudraksha beads. That can give good results through prayer practice. Mars, if we've got a nice Mars within the chart, good dignity Mars, that can give better results through gemstones. Mercury with mantra. Saturn with service and with fasting. So there's a number of things. Venus with devotional practices. So there's a number of things that you have to see within a person's chart to see if it's going to work, which is why I think, potentially, there can be lots of complaints around remedial measures. You know, this astrologer prescribed this for me. I spent $3,000 on a gemstone, nothing happened. Or I got this yagya, nothing happened. What I found that really cuts down on the failure rate is to determine if the person is going to benefit from a particular remedy in the first place. And I've already done one video on this, so you might want to go back to previous talks to see that. But gemstones are an important one too, because, well, number one, in Vedic astrology, the gemstones that are typically advised are the most expensive gemstones. You know, cat's eye chrysoberyl, sapphire, emerald, natural pearl. And I experimented with them, and especially when I was doing more traditional Vedic astrology. And because I like gemstones, I didn't mind too much. But I did find that they didn't work that well, at least the traditional way of prescribing them. And then about, I don't know how many years ago it was, but I discovered Ernst Wilhelm's course on gemstone therapy. And if you, again, go to AshevilleVedicAstrology.com to the MP3 audios and scroll down, you'll see a listing for that there. It's a wonderful course. And he describes sort of the history of Vedic astrology and gemstones, and that they weren't typically used the way they're used today. And he also has an interesting theory of gemstones that they're based on the crystalline structure of the stone. So, for example, sapphires aren't necessarily for, blue sapphire isn't necessarily for Saturn. It's for Venus, if Venus was in Gemini. Because in order to get the proper gemstone, you have to know what is the correct crystalline structure. Sapphires are crystalline structures for Venus. You have to know what is the proper color, and that's based on the placement of the planet within a sign. Blue is the sign for Gemini. And when I started applying this with myself, with the clients that I was prescribing it for, I started getting much better results. And a lot of these gemstones that work very well aren't the most expensive gemstones. For example, for Jupiter, jade is an excellent gemstone. For Venus, tourmaline can be a good gemstone. For Mars, topaz. And again, that's because the crystalline structures resonate or are representative of the planet, the crystalline structure. And then the color is based on where the planet is placed. Now, there's lots of rules that you have to follow in order to do this right. So don't just start looking up these stones and wearing them. Because if you wear a stone, like let's say you've got your Mars in Leo. All right, so if your Mars is in Leo, then that would be a yellow topaz. Because topaz is for Mars, Leo is the color yellow. Now let's pretend that you accidentally get a imperial topaz, which is a pink topaz. Well, it's still topaz, so it's still for Mars, but that would be for Mars in Cancer, because Cancer's color is pink. And you don't want to do that, because you don't want to wear a gemstone that is as though you were putting that planet in the 12th house, the 6th, 8th, or 12th away from its actual position in your birth chart. And again, this is all explained in Ernst Wilhelm's course on gemstones, which is an extremely excellent course. So anyway, you got to consider these sorts of things. Now, the other thing that I've noticed about remedial measures, again, I look at the 5th house lord, the placement of Jupiter. Why the 5th house? Because the 5th house shows our capacity to make improvements within our life, to even believe that it's possible. If someone has a great 5th house, you can recommend remedial measures in general, and they'll benefit from them because they already have this capacity to see that change is possible and that they can improve upon their situation. You get a difficult 5th house. That's the person that calls you that says, I've tried everything known to man, nothing's working, you're my last hope, and of course you're going to be the one that does it. And you do the session and you give the work, and of course they say, no, that's not going to work either. So there's a sort of like loop, this repetitious pattern within their consciousness of failure, which is a hard thing to get over. And this is why in previous videos I've talked about the power of faith, and how if a person does not have a faith in something, in anything, then they're kind of lost in a sense. So that's why spiritual practices, developing one's faith, it's a practice. It's an exploration. It's something that we really have to do. Otherwise, we're always going to be locked in these patterns of doubt, and those patterns of doubt will become real self-fulfilling prophecies for us. So it's an interesting thing, but you'll see people like this. And you'll know other people that always know that there's a way out. No matter what, they can be in the worst situation ever, but they know there's a way that they can work this, that they can make the best of it. And that's probably someone with a really excellent 5th house, or Jupiter. Usually 5th house, that's what I focus on mainly for that. So we're not trying to be judgmental here. We're just trying to call a rock a rock. We're trying to see the reality of a situation. And just like you wouldn't expect someone with an IQ of 60 to be able to do theoretical physics, it's just the reality of the situation. If you get someone with a negative 5th house, don't really expect them to make gigantic changes within their life, positive changes within their life, because they have that negative karma there. What you need to encourage them to do is develop some sort of faith, some practice that allows them to go beyond their mind and their personality, to see that it's possible to have positive changes. And this is the key behind all remedial measures in my mind, because I've just seen it happen over and over again, where you get the most optimistic, successful person, and the remedial measure will work for them. You get the most pessimistic, difficult person, and you give them the best remedial measure ever. Nothing happens. But it's not just remedies such as gemstones or mantra. It's also anything. Someone can get the best medical treatment in the world, but if there's something in their consciousness that prevents them from benefiting from it, it doesn't matter if the doctor is the best doctor in the world. That doctor will still lose that patient. So we don't want to just think that this applies to astrology. This applies to everything. And that's what astrology applies to as well. So we can see all these different influences. I was really excited. I was asked to come back and talk at the School of Massage and Yoga here in Asheville. I've talked there many times before to the students. I was asked to talk on astrology. That's not until next year. But I realized, well, this is fascinating. I used to be a body worker myself, and I used to work with a lot of clients. And it wasn't until I discovered this 5th house thing that I quit getting so bent out of shape when I couldn't help someone, because I would go nuts trying to help people that just couldn't respond. And so I'm really excited to teach this class, because I'm going to give them the tools to say, look, when you're working with a client, here is what you need to look at, to consider, to see, should you expect that this person's going to have good feedback and good results? Because for massage, for example, the person needs to have a good Venus to get good results. So we can see the different things that the person might respond to, and then we can look at the 5th house to see, are they going to respond overall in general in a positive way. So these are some interesting things about remedial measures, and this is why there is that ongoing debate. But try to remember again that even doctors fail. Everyone in any profession fails at some point. So it's not like... Sometimes I just get a little frustrated with the idea that gemstones aren't helpful. Because I understand, and I don't really recommend people to go buy thousands of dollars worth of gemstones if they don't even have $20 in their bank account or put it on a credit card. But it's in my experience that it's really just the application and understanding of the person's chart to see if it's going to work, which is why for a lot of my clients I don't recommend gemstones or I don't recommend mantra. I try to find that area where they will have something that they can work with based on a strength of a planet, and I tell them to work on that particular thing. So keep this in mind with remedial measures. It's a deep subject. It's a very worthwhile subject to study, and it can be very helpful to a client. But again, we always must be realistic and realize that some people can be helped and some people can't. And it's not up to us to decide. It's up to us to do our best to say what we need to say, but ultimately it is their own destiny that needs to be fulfilled through their own path. And this is the hard thing about astrology sometimes, because you can know all the techniques, and you can be looking at someone's chart, and you can know something, but it's almost like there's an aspect, something going on that won't let you say it. And you wonder why, and I've contemplated this before, and the answer that always comes back is because that's not for them to know. You know, it's not for them to, they need to learn first. They need to learn something first. So it's a tricky thing, and occasionally that's when I've considered quitting being an astrologer. It doesn't happen too often, but every now and then. Only because you see so much, and you can only say so much, and it's a hard thing. So anyway, keep this in mind. But the ultimate remedy, beyond all of this, the ultimate remedy is self-knowledge, which is really what Vedic astrology is meant to be about. What is self-knowledge? It's knowing what you are beyond your name, your body, your personality. It's knowing what you are, that aspect of you that experiences your dreams, that is experienced every lifetime, that aspect of you that is within your partner, within your family, within your friends, within everything that you do. And the best ways that I found to explore that are through Kriya Yoga practice and the self-inquiry of Ramana Maharshi. You follow those things and you apply them, you don't really worry too much about remedial measures so much anymore. So if you want to know the ultimate remedy, I would say find someone to teach you meditation. Find someone to teach you about the Yoga Sutras. Start living a disciplined life in that regard as best you can. Now, we all have our little quirks, so we're not all perfect, but do it as best you can until you get that direct insight into what you are. And then you won't worry about all these little things. You won't worry about if you have Raja Yogas. You won't worry about if you have Arishta Yogas, because you'll know what you are. And it's a very freeing experience. So keep this in mind with remedies. That is the best remedy. Ultimately, that is the best remedy. All right. So we're almost done. I know I keep saying that. I think I've repeated myself a lot in these last few videos, but I think you're getting the point. So next up, a brief step-by-step approach. And this will be based on the longer version, the longer step-by-step approach that we had in the step-by-step course. So in the step-by-step course, I think I had like a 4-page step-by-step. So starting with, this is how we assess house number 1, and there was like 10 steps. This is how we assess house number 2, and there were 10 steps. And so there are all these steps that you go through to figure out just how to assess a chart. But since, again, this is a survey course, I'll try to break it down a little bit more basic so that you can get a real sense of getting good information from a chart without having to overwhelm your brain with computations and different kinds of thoughts. So it's been enjoyable, and we'll talk soon.